Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. My name is Bliss Foster. Today, we're doing part 2 of answering your fashion questions. I asked everybody to ask a fashion question, start a conversation, and then I will, to the best of my ability, either answer it or pose more questions that could help us reach a conclusion. There's another part 1 of this. There's no continuity between these. You can watch both of them. You should watch both of them. Philly D voice, let's jump straight into it. Do you really like tabbies, or have you just been conditioned to think that you like tabbies? You know what I like most about tabbies? I like that it drives people crazy when they see me wearing them. I've actually had, in this comment here, you are asserting that I do not really like tabbies. And I have had strangers out in public come up to me and start a conversation about my shoes. And at some point in that 45-second conversation, they tell me that I don't like them, which to me mostly says that in their brain, they're like, no one can like that. Those are so ugly. What are you doing? And I love that. And I do genuinely love tabbies, for all you know. Why don't you ever talk smack about brands? There are so many brands doing goofy things. Why don't you call them out on it? This is actually a decision that I had to make really early on in my YouTube career. There definitely are designers that make uninspired things, and there definitely are brands that do things that are worth saying, like, hey, what are you doing? I'm one person making this channel. I don't have time or capacity to cover everything. I can only cover a very small percentage of what is actually happening in fashion on a season-to-season basis. So the decision that I have made is to only cover brands and collections that I'm like, wow, this was really inspiring. I love this. There's so much to talk about here. That's what I want to cover. If I really didn't like something, I just don't think of it as worth my time. And that doesn't mean that every brand I don't cover isn't worth my time. There are tons of brands where I'm like, why have I not done a Vivienne Westwood show yet? Why have I not done a Mugler show yet? Why have I not done a Marine Sayre show? Why has there not been a Y Project episode? Etc. But yeah, just the stuff that I am like, wow, I really don't like this, or wow, they really phoned it in this season. I just don't think of that stuff as being worth covering. I did, however, make one video where I was pretty ruthlessly making fun of Philip Plein, and that is a Patreon exclusive. I'm super proud of that video. I've never made something exclusively for the purpose of just making people laugh, and I'm pretty pleased with how that one turned out. But outside of Philip Plein, who seems to be universally an industry joke, I don't feel any need to pick out a designer or a specific collection and just make fun of it for 20 minutes. Why don't big brands sue AliExpress? That is a super good question. I think this comes down to copyright law and international copyright law, wherein fashion is considered an object that cannot be copyrighted because it's a practical object. Now, obviously, the fashion that we are all into is not a practical object. It is an object of self-expression of the designer and my self-expression by wearing it. But as far as just clothing creation in general, there's no distinction between high fashion and just fashion generally. And all clothing is thought of the same way as like a pot. Like you can't copyright the shape of a pot because it's a pot. Many different brands need to be able to create a pot so that there can be pots in the world. That's how they think of it. So it's really, really difficult to copyright a pattern design or even a color palette. Sometimes there are brands that do sue because they feel like a very distinctive color palette that's unique to their brand is being used. Amiri sued Zara or somebody and said, like, you're copying our torn up skinny jeans and stuff. So some lawsuits like this do happen. I will say a funny conclusion to that story was that as the case was being tossed out, I don't think Amiri was successful in that. Zara rebuffed at the end of the hearing by saying, the design is generic, it belongs to no one, which is like, big burn. Who is the drippiest president? I don't think this even is a discussion, right? I think it's incredibly obvious. The drippiest president is William Howard Taft. Look at this. Just fit after fit after fit. He went nuclear on them every single day. William Dripward Taft. There's only like a few pictures of William Howard Taft. Sorry, I had to repeat some. Can we really 100% achieve sustainable fashion? Okay, so I've reiterated this before, and I'm gonna say it again. You as a consumer of information, the people who should be giving you answers to this question, any question about sustainability, this is a science topic. And who is qualified to speak about science topics? Scientists. So here's the challenge that I'm going to put out for this. I am not going to answer this question because, again, I'm not a scientist. And to be frank, I don't want to spread misinformation. I can say very vague things about sustainability where it's like sustainability is important. Like if you buy stuff secondhand, that's more sustainable than buying stuff brand new and then getting rid of it in a month. That's pretty vague stuff. But for nuanced questions like this, that is a question that should go to a scientist. So I want everyone to go out and to look for scientifically quotable sources and to find if there is an answer to that question and then leave it in the comments. And here's the trick. You have to cite a source for it. A source that another scientist would say, that's a credible source. Can we find an answer? How can haute couture make money? It can't, and it doesn't. Haute couture is incredibly lossy in the business model of every fashion house that participates in it. There's only a few brands that I know of that do haute couture and don't have any other means of cash flow, and that's like Iris van Herpen, which all of her stuff is very specialized clients because she's only making like 16 looks every 6 months. And they're not being manufactured. It's just the one look and then it gets sold. Every other brand uses haute couture as essentially a commercial to sell the rest of their products. They lose a ton of money on the fashion show, even when they're selling it to private clients and stuff. That's not where the money is coming from. They don't even pay for the runway show, I think, by selling those dresses, even though many of those dresses are over $100,000. Haute couture is inherently unprofitable. Unheard of collab ideas. The Peter Doe meal at Waffle House. Ray Kawakubo in Major League Baseball. It's a home run. Marine Serre and Exxon Mobil. The future of the world is uncertain. Flo Milli and Kohl's. What's gonna happen? Someone on the Discord one time said Balenciaga and Silly Bands, and I immediately Googled to see if that had actually happened because I thought maybe it actually had, but it hasn't yet. It should. Lego Star Wars and Mugler? Do a clip of... I'm Iris van Herpen, and this is my pawn shop. That's all I got. What fashion brand is better in surrealist designs? Daniel Roseberry's Schiaparelli. I have a huge video where I covered all of his shows up to the present moment. And oh my gosh, this stuff, if you love surrealism, Daniel Roseberry has got you covered. Oh my gosh, his stuff is wild. You should watch that episode. There's a lot of surrealist elements in there that are easy to miss, but I think I got just about everything in that video. It's well worth checking out. I'm super proud of that one. If I'm not a fashion graduate, can I still have a career in fashion? Technically, yes. That's really, really difficult. Many of the people that I've talked to in the industry who have successful careers, they did go to fashion school because trying to teach yourself all of these things just by using YouTube tutorials and, books about pattern making from the internet, it's just really, really difficult to do. And it's especially difficult to build connections in the industry that way. A bunch of people would say why is Harvard a good school? You don't even have to go to classes. Just the connections that you get from having those teachers, that is worth, not worth the tuition fee. Is anything worth tuition fee? But the connections are really the big thing that is important. Oftentimes fashion school professors are able to hook you up with your first job. And at that job, you're going to end up learning an enormous number of things that, again, learning on your own is just going to take a ton of time. So there are some people whose brains are just wired like that. They're great at teaching themselves stuff, and they're really great at being proactive and trying lots of different things and constantly working and constantly building connections. But for most of us, I'm certainly in this group, I need an external factor that's kind of enforcing the learning and kind of helping guide me along in order to really get rolling with something. If you want to learn more about what fashion school is actually like, I did a video recently called Is Fashion School Worth It? That's definitely worth watching. So we've been talking generally on the channel lately about the disappearance of subculture after the internet and whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, or is it just different or whatever. So in the section of my private Discord where I was saying, hey, ask me fashion questions, I'm going to make a video out of them, somebody responded to this question of subculture in a really great way. This isn't a question, but I thought this thought was incredible. This person said, is it okay if I rant a bit about subculture and how absolutely bogus garbage it is that so many people say things like, oh, there's no subculture anymore. Kids these days just don't want to be interesting. Because hoo boy, am I not okay with that. One of the major issues with subcultures is that they immediately get capitalized on, swooped up and sold at Target. It's hard to build a proper subculture when as soon as a group gets off the ground with a name to it, they start selling it at Walmart. Blaming kids these days for an issue that's really just, we've built a monster that eats creativity as soon as it starts. That is a great point. What are some alternative ways to learn different from traditional media such as books? So I'm going to kind of sidestep your question a little bit here because this brings up a really good point. I would say that as far as learning about fashion things is concerned, 98% of the people in this hobby are learning about this or thinking that they're learning about this by scrolling on Instagram. So that, to be honest, it's not a bad way of learning about fashion. It is a very, very slow way of learning about fashion. I mean, you mentioned books. I would say that books are the most underrated way of learning about fashion that exists. I mean, I've done tons of videos about different books that I really love and like how to learn from different books or whatever. But like, if you go pick up a book like Dressed, A Philosophy of Clothes, or this book, Gods and Kings, or like one of my favorite fashion books of all time, Amatura, which is about the rise of the American aesthetic in Japanese clothing. You will learn so much per hour just reading a book like that than you will in weeks and weeks and weeks of just scrolling on your phone, taking whatever's given to you. I have a whole video called 16 Ways to Learn Everything About Fashion. I outline all of my different ways for consuming fashion information in that video. You should check it out. What do you think about polyester, and why do brands use it? I would say that most of the time brands use polyester because it is very, 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 very cheap. Polyester in almost all use cases is garbage. It's very not good. However, there are some things that like kind of you need to use polyester in order to achieve your goals, like pleats. Pleats are something where polyester is a really useful material that can be used in a purposeful way. There are a lot of designs from Comme des Garçons that I don't think could happen at all if they weren't using some kind of polyester, or at least a polyester blend in them. But for the most part, seeing that there is polyester in a garment is a huge deal breaker for me and will make it where I don't get it. Unless again, it's being used in what I deem to be a purposeful way. How can we make people understand fashion is art and culture and not just about fancy things? Okay, so you can spend a lot of time and a lot of mental energy and anguish trying to convince your parents or like your family at Thanksgiving that like fashion is art, and it's not about like who would buy this, it's about it being a piece of art, and Dad, you don't get it. Or you can just not worry about that and let those people think whatever they want and enjoy it for yourself. I mean, I have totally given up on trying to convince other people of like my positions. I make videos, I put them out into the world. If people like it, great. I don't know if you've ever looked through my comments section. Plenty of people think I'm a total idiot. So like, that's fine too. I feel no pressure to convince those people otherwise. Just go and enjoy the stuff that you like. And I should say, for the record, my father is incredibly supportive of what I do. He likes this stuff a lot and will like occasionally sit down and watch shows with me. My dad is very cool. I was using that as a hypothetical. I mean, it shouldn't be surprising. My father put this together from thrift stores and flea markets. Like, my dad is clearly an eccentric dude. He likes the arts. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want more good conversations like this, I mean, go join the Patreon, get on the private Discord server. I know that it can be a lot to ask, like, go sign up for this thing and you haven't used this website before, and then go join this other social media. So Patreon is the way that this channel is able to run. It just allows you to kick me a few bucks a month so that the channel is able to continue running. And the Discord, if you're not already on Discord, I get it. It's intimidating downloading a new thing. If you're looking for more community-based stuff in a way that Instagram really can't provide, where, you know, maybe you're DMing with people or maybe you're interacting with people sometimes in comments, Discord is created to be a communal social network. So the private Discord that I run is the single best community for fashion that I've ever been a part of on the internet. And I mean, it's a really encouraging, awesome place. A lot of knowledgeable people in there. I love being in there. I use it every single day. So yeah, go join the Patreon, make it where the lights can stay on here, the channel can continue to run, and I love you a lot. Thanks so much for joining me. Goodbye.